I'm gonna run. I left my reading glasses in the car.
Yeah.
Hello.
Are we online? No, we're not yet.
Yes, you are.
Good morning, everyone.
Don't let everybody kid you.
Morning, everyone online. We're just running a few minutes behind schedule here. We'll be up and running in a few seconds or a few minutes. Sorry. I will mute the room until we get ready to get started. And if you need me, just go ahead and hit the chat function on online. Thanks.
Well, there's Michelle.
I appreciate you both.
Yeah, let's do that. Drinks are on me. Have some water.
All right, it's 10:11. On Friday, June 3rd, called to order the Ad Hoc Budget Committee. We have roll call, please.
Ford. Gums,
Present.
Caius,
Kai's present.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Sturgis,
Sturgis here.
Pepe,
Happy here.
Urog, Berman.
Berman's here.
We have a quorum.
All right, any public comments? I don't know of any. I think that item 4, presentation from Erica from the finance, the Kane County's payroll for 2022. Thank you very much, Erica, for being here.
Thank you.
It's up to you.
All right. We're just waiting for them to display.
And Erica, if I can ask a question beforehand, there was a packet handed out or distributed a week or so ago with a bunch of numbers on it. There were an email with 2. Is this in correlation with that? Is this separate
That's
to
for the
that?
Safety Act?
Yes.
Yes, that is included in
Okay.
my presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Incorporated in it, yeah.
Yes.
I brought my copy of the Safety Act summary.
Yes.
That's what I have.
Yeah.
Our numbers match that for the most part. We did add a little bit to it because we had to also include the increases for IMRF and FICA because that also does affect the general fund. So I'll explain all that when I get over there. Okay. All right. So the display is up now. Really,
This is a good start.
it's a great start. Okay, so what this actually is a little bit more than maybe you bargained for based on the description of what I would be presenting today. This is actually a full forecast for the general fund, starting with our current budget fiscal year 22 through the end of the year and going forward 3 years, 23, 24, and 25.
I'm sorry, but was this information emailed to the people that are online?
It was posted on outside of the agenda packet, so it's available. there.
Okay, so, okay.
Available, yeah.
Just want to make sure they've got it.
Yes,
It was at 9:01 this morning.
yes, it was. Okay, so the first 4 pages here are detailed revenue, and the way we derive these figures is with the help of the departments and offices. So as part of the budget process every year, we send out, requests for revenue forecasts. And this is the information that's come back from the individual departments and offices about where they think their revenues will be changing going forward based on what they're seeing, as well as the finance department's review of the general items. All right. So if we go through this, I'm not going to go through individual items on this. Can you advance it? Doesn't seem to be working.
Oh. You don't have control over it?
Oh, there we go. Okay, so at the end of page 4, you'll see the total there at the bottom, and that is just indicates what the current and then anticipated the forecasted revenues are, the totals there at the end. The next page. Okay, great. The next page going forward is it's kind of broken out into sections, and we're just going to go through one by one. So the first section is removing the use of the reserves that we needed to use to balance the 2022 budget. So the reason why we did that is because in the next section after that, it shows what we think the general fund revenue shortfall is based on the use of those reserves. And because, we have a balanced budget for fiscal year 2022 with the use of the reserves, we know that the expenditures, what the expenditures are, since we know what the revenues are. And so assuming that, and also knowing the amounts of the reserves that we use, we carried those items forward through all those additional years because we know that if we needed that much and all the expenditures remain flat, we would need that much going forward as well. There's also a couple additional items there, the change in the revenue compared to fiscal year 22 that also carries forward. And then we did add back in the IMRF 2023 rate reduction as a one-time thing because we don't know if that reduction will continue. So that made the deficit a little bit better than it would have been for 2023. The next section here talks about increases in expenditures, further increasing the revenue shortfall. So the first block here is FY22 additional budget adjustments that have occurred since we started compiling this information. So there are items that have resolutions that have been passed that affected the general funds April to June. And for June, those are the items that were on the finance committee and moved forward, but haven't been fully approved yet.
Talking about now.
We're talking about the increase in expenditures, further increasing revenue shortfall.
So the
And it
third,
begins, right, the third, right, and so,
Five?
right.
these are
starts-
not, these pages are not numbered.
Chris, the first thing I
Right.
did was take and
Sorry.
numbered the pages. So when she says that, I was able to follow along.
We're on page 5 and this is.
You're in the middle of
third
page
section.
5. Yep.
The bottom, the increase in expenditures, further increasing revenue.
Right.
Shortfall.
And I was just talking about that first block there where it says off to the side, FY22 additional budget adjustments, April through June.
Okay.
Okay, so the next section there talks about anticipated expenditure increases. So first, just taking a 4% salary increase across the board for all the general fund salaries. This is what those figures look like going forward there. And then for the healthcare and dental increases, healthcare increase for 2023, we know that that increase right now is 9.7%. And then we used 8.5% for 2024 and 2025 forecasts.
Is that listed somewhere in here?
No, I'm just letting you know that that's how I got the numbers there.
And we're talking about, this says 4% salary increase and then the health and dental increase is what again?
9.7% for 2023.
Yes.
And 8.5% is what we use for 2024 and 25 because that is the Blue Cross standard increase rate. For dental, that we're not expecting any increase for 2023, so we left that one out. And then 2024 and 25, we used a 5% increase there for both of those years. And for both the contractual services increases and commodities increase, we took in a 4% increase just due to the rising costs that we continue to see in goods and services and the continued requests that we are seeing coming through for adjustments to the current budget on that.
That was 4% again?
Yes, 4%. This last grouping is what was presented, what Cliff was referring to earlier, the Safety Act Justice Partners requests. We used the request that they presented, other than the fact that we had needed to add in the IMRF and FICA, since those also do affect the general fund. So they're a little bit higher than what you would have seen on the initial request. They're just for the staffing piece. The operating and the capital is what they had actually requested. I did add a 2022 amount in there because I was contacted by the SAO and they let me know that they're at their next committee, they're going to be requesting that some of those positions be funded in FY22.
Okay, I'm sorry.
From our general fund.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
permission to scooch my chair? Help me. So from this sheet here to this one, where are those numbers?
Okay, so this is the additional place. This is the personnel cost here. And I had to add to it.
So roughly in here.
Yes, it's in there. That's exactly that plus IMRF and FICA. And this is exactly this plus IMRF.
So
and
this is,
FICA.
so this is just this section.
Yes,
Got
just
it.
that section.
So
And
those
then-
following along,
Yeah.
on the summary sheet,
Sorry.
Safety Act.
additional personnel costs
Yes,
is the only thing in the sheet that Erica just gave us now at the bottom.
yes, where it says Safety Act Justice Partners additional staffing.
Mhm.
That is that plus the addition of IMRF and FICA.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
so the 4,428,000. I have
That's a safety.
180,000.
translating.
I'm just translating. Should be.
There's 3,925,000, so that's,
5861. It became 4.
there's a 500,000 of IMRF and FICA.
Yes, IMRF is 5.15% of total salaries and FICA is 7.65% of the total salary amount there. So that correlates to that number.
This 4.4.
Mhm.
You have to pay that, huh?
So
Is
this is
that-
the updated.
This is.
Pretty
the
much, that's
updated.
one of those we don't get a chance. to-
No, it went up. It was 3,925.
Oh, I see.
2023. Yeah, this is the 2023.
So that's just the
forecast here.
state's attorney's portion?
Yes, that's the whole, these are all the justice partners. So that's that, the 2024, it becomes 7,625.
I'm just in
and
the
then
wrong
988.
column.
Yeah,
2024. I got you.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
all right. Sorry.
That ties out to what you have there.
Just trying to correlate the different columns from the one
Makes
spreadsheet to
sense.
the other.
Good, good.
Because the summary sheet didn't have, this is really hot. The summary sheet didn't have a 2022 column.
Right.
Erica's sheet today does have a 2022.
Right, and that's new because they called me yesterday or the day before yesterday and told me that they're going to be submitting a resolution. The state's attorney's office called me and let me know that they would be submitting a resolution at their next judicial public safety committee to fund some of those positions as early as FY22. So that number.
141,453 comes
Yes,
in.
that's correct. And that's only for the portion remaining in this fiscal year. It's not the full
Understand,
salaries of what they're trying to fund. We don't do budget adjustments for more than, what it could potentially be, if at all possible. So that's only for the portion that remaining in FY22
That's
of
if
the
they can
salaries
hire 'em.
they're going to request, right? Okay, so, and then after that, there's the safety partners, additional operating capital, and those figures should match what was presented there on your summary sheet. So what that brings us to, the total here is the further general fund anticipated revenue shortfall, and you see that those numbers are very significant. And again, this is without the use of reserves, and that, and that would be what we would need to, we're forecasting we would need to create a balanced budget, just if the expenses were flat and with the additional expenditures that are listed there only.
I mean, just for clarity,
Mhm.
details of what each department asked for in additional operating costs. But do you know what made up those costs? Would that be like phone and,
Are you talking about the Safety Act piece?
yeah, the Safety Act, like, what makes up the 580,275 for?
I
2023.
honestly, I'm not sure. I wasn't able to see that presentation that they did at the committee.
Yeah,
of
and
the
I'm trying to
whole.
remember it too. Did you guys remember?
The safety act amount each
No,
year.
the operating costs, what,
Wasn't that for gums? Wasn't that for, technology? There were some technology issues and then storage.
it was but it was things like technology and phone and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's the 689,1,000, which they're saying for additional capital
That
costs.
would be, I believe that's related to space,
The
to house
buildings,
the employees that they're looking to hire.
New officers.
But that's
New
an
courtroom and
estimated,
whatnot.
number. They haven't actually determined where that space would be. Am I correct? Okay.
So just,
Mr. Berman, and Erica, we're going way off reservation now. So after following the presentation that was made, I got to be honest with you, my head was spinning, trying to grasp all that information. So I scheduled some time to speak with State's Attorney Mosser individually and kind of went through, because I had some fundamental questions asking. This really seems like a truly bad piece of legislation to me. And she says that there is bipartisan support that truly this is a bad piece of legislation. So my question to her was, with all these efforts that we're going to be making, what did she feel, or what was the flavor out there that there would be changes or amendments or addendums? And she really said that, Cliff, this thing kicks in on January 1st, and we need to be making assumptions and changes now to hit that date. And that, you know, the changes that would need to be made would need to be done before November in order to hit those dates. And she didn't feel that there was going to be much modification to this, at least in the first year. And hopefully what I'm saying that she would echo, and I'm not embellishing anything. And then I challenged her to say, I asked who put the spreadsheet together, and she told me who it was. And being a data analytics granular guy, you know, I was getting right into some of the spreadsheet fields to say, where's the assumption on the number? If you need 61 people, but that group only needs 4 people, based on what? And she said the data that they were using was a study that was put together. And short of DuPage County, we're only the second people adopting this, and everybody else is kind of watching what we're doing to see how they're going to fall into place on this. But Vern, each one of those fields are truly based on assumptions that aren't proven yet. And we said, wonderful. How do I know if I agree or disagree with your assumption? And they said, we give you access to Terry and go, you know, let's challenge each other to see if we have this. But I have no reason to believe that those are off. And just the quantity, if you work in a world of numbers, it's either, you know, frequency or severity. We have both here. The severity is huge and the frequency of things is enormous. And the way the court system will work, just for the Safety Act, from this point on changes dramatically. And Jamie was going through that and she goes, that's just my office. You haven't even gotten to the public defender's office yet, or the sheriff's office, or within the sheet, Vern. She was saying, I'm doing this portion, and we were talking about training. You know, the act requires X amount of training to happen. And she goes, the number you're getting in there is really pared down because we're going to try and satisfy that training in-house through the state's attorney's office for the sheriff's department. But if the sheriff's department had to conduct that training off-site, that number would be ridiculously more. And she goes, but we don't have that approved yet. And we don't know what that's going to look like. That these are just projections on what it's going to be. So when I started challenging some of the fields that I had highlighted, I don't want to say guesstimate, but truly none of this stuff is vetted yet. And we are well ahead of the game. And I think rightfully so. I think we're doing the right thing at the right time. But this critter is big. This one is kind of scary. So
I'm Tepe here. I understand your position, but I don't think we have the time to question, the estimates associated with this. If we were to go back and say, wait a minute, we want to redo your estimates, we'd be here for 6 months and wouldn't get anything done.
I'll agree with that statement and say the strength is in our numbers. So I'd be happy to work on this portion if Bill will work on that portion and Vernon work on that and stuff like that. And if we find something that we can refine, Yahoo. But if not, it is what it is and we keep moving.
You talking strictly with the
My
safety
point
act?
is that it's
Just the
going to
safety
be
act.
more. We're only talking about how much more. And it's going to be revised once we get into some level of reality. But we have to work with, with the kinds of numbers that they've done and understand that we've got great people that are doing their best. I think we need to take these numbers with,
I think they're pretty concrete. I think this is what we have to work with.
I'm with
right,
you.
that's my point. That's
Right. This is
Gums,
what
I
we
got a
have to work
comment.
with.
Hey, Gums here. We had a meeting with the state's attorneys, the public defenders, and some other folks and other counties. We had a whole bunch of counties involved in that meeting. And frankly, you're right, Cliff. Everybody is kind of looking to us, and we are ahead of the game. But I think what we have in front of us is a good place to start. We have nothing else to use.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's completely uncharted territory, but if we fall behind the ball, we're in big trouble.
Well, and it's just the plan too, right? I mean, we
Right.
evolves as this thing evolves. What do you mean by, excuse me, because Caius, you were saying frequency and severity involved in
Those are just
it?
insurance words that those are just words
That's
we
what
use.
claims are based on.
You can have a whole bunch of little expenses, or you can have one or two big giant ones.
Oh, okay.
We have both in this case.
I see.
I
Okay,
mean, we
sorry.
truly-
Mr. Chair Bates, please.
Hey,
Thank you. I want to keep in mind that this safety bill is a giant leap forward for criminal justice reform. So even though to us implementing it, it's a pain in the neck, this is very important for protecting everybody, the police, with the cameras and the no cash bail is releasing people from spending so much time in jail before they're even proven guilty or innocent. So maybe if we keep in mind the spirit of this law, it won't be quite so hard to do.
I think you're absolutely right, Mavis. And I don't think that's our point here is to question what the legitimacy of this thing is. We
Somebody
know we've
said
got
it's a
it.
really
We're just trying to
terrible
figure out
bill.
how we can pay for the debt.
Mr. Caius, somebody
so-
just said it's a really terrible bill. So I
I
just
Well-
agree
want to
with that.
say
I
it's
think
a
it is a
good bill.
terrible bill.
It's,
I don't
Ms.
like it.
Bates, this is Surges, and I will
I don't-
reiterate,
I
I
don't-
think this is a horrible piece of legislation, period.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call the point of order. That's we're I don't want to get off on this.
Yeah.
This is going to be big enough for me without the,
no, that's all right. I'll get it later. Thank you.
so.
Thank you. I
if
got
we
another.
can- I thought maybe you were coming for me there. This is terrible. Just kidding.
Saw it roll off.
I saw it too, but I think we need somebody limber to do that. Now we can get off on that. That's fine.
Mr. Leonard,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number one, I really appreciate all the work and the interest people on this committee have put into this before the meeting, which I think is key. But I think the reality is we've got the numbers that they are using as their best projections for the next 3 years. And like Mr. Kaya said, and Ms. Bates said, we have to find a way to fund that. So what we have to do is accept these numbers right now, whether they go up, down, or whatever. And in fact, in speaking to some of the partners, they honestly believe, although they wouldn't want to say publicly, that these numbers may even go down. I mean, as an example, in the state's attorney's office, they're looking at 61 new people. That's not.
I
gonna
don't see
happen.
how they're going to do that.
Yeah, and then the public defender only gets 21. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So I think what we have to do is just use these numbers. We can like or dislike the legislation, but that's not our responsibility. Ours is to finance it. So I agree with the other comments that we should just find a way to finance what we need to finance, not only for the mandates for the next 3 years, but also pay raises for all our employees. And I think there might be some solutions, but I'm open to whatever anybody else thinks.
Okay, so moving on to the last page of the presentation here are some potential and actual funding sources. Actual refers to the funding sources for FY '22. Those are the use of the reserves that have allowed us to keep our budget in balance, remaining in balance. And then for FY '23 through FY '25, those are the potential funding sources for the revenue shortfalls. The first section, the first 3 items are some sustainable revenue sources that we can look at. And I'm sorry, I have a little typo here. It says property tax increase 5%. I did use 5% for 2023, but I used 4% for 2024 and 25, an increase for that. And that's just taking into account that the CPI index may decrease going forward. So we felt 4% was a little bit, maybe a little bit better number to use just to be conservative there.
I'm sorry, how would we increase the property tax by that amount? Are you just saying it's going to increase? By that?
No, it would be if we did increase the property tax by 5% or the limit of the CPI, which for 2023, the most we could increase it by would be 5%.
Okay, so we're talking about the CPI increase.
Yes,
not about-
exactly.
Okay. Just-
Sorry.
Just understand understand your assumptions.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Okay, and then next is a 0.25% of sales tax increase. And that estimate was based on the number of 13 million. And that increase is based on the estimate report we got from the State of Illinois Department of Revenue from 2019 through 2021 on the sales tax amounts that were applicable, and not all, and that's not everything. So we picked 13 million going forward based on what they provided us. And it's less in 2023 because if that
Wouldn't go
referendum
into
was
effect until
on
July
November,
1.
right, it would only take effect in July 1. That would be the earliest we could see that. And then if there's a 0.5%, 0.50% sales tax increase, that just doubles, the figures from above with all the same assumptions there. Next is the reserves that we have available or potentially available. And we didn't carry them forward past 2023 because the 2023 amounts are what we currently have available now. And that means like if nothing else increased, we didn't have to use those reserves for anything past the June items that we know about through December. That's what we believe we have currently available. We didn't carry those forward because of, it depends on what we use actually from year to year. So basically what this report I think indicates is that, we have some big revenue deficits that we know of that we're anticipating going forward, and it shows some potential ways that we might be able to balance the budget.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, Eric, I'd like to ask you a question on your forecast under the general fund.
Yeah.
For 2023. You show the revenue totals going down about $7 million.
What page?
That would be on page 4,
4. Thank you.
bottom of page 4.
The revenue shortfall for 2023 is $18 million.
The page just before that, I believe. Page 4. Right on the top is general fund 2022 to 2025.
Yes. Right.
And on the bottom of that, you show general fund revenue totals for 22, 23, 24, and 25.
Yes.
In 23, you show our revenue going down $7 million. So I'd like to know how you came up with that figure.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
from the 102 to the 95 as you're talking about,
Yes.
the bottom line.
right. This forecast is it's based on how these revenues relate to the changes that were presented to us by the departments from 20, and all basing it on what they are related to 2022, because that's all we know right now. So it's based on all the items from above. That's just a total. There was another column in there would change. Maybe that would have been better for me to show, and I can redo this to show that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because in talking with a few people about the budget, as the treasurer said at our last finance meeting or judicial and public safety meeting, property tax revenues this year are going to go up $40 million. We as a county get 4% of that. So that's a 1.6%, 1.6 million increase.
Right.
I don't see that in here anywhere. And with respect to the sales tax and just a general evaluation increase in property taxes, I don't see where we're showing any of those. So I understand what you're doing here, but I think there are considerations that maybe we haven't put into place yet.
This is based on information, when we started this forecast, it's based on the information provided to us both from the, from the departments and offices of what they're seeing in the area. So this is, and, this will change. I'm sure this is just a forecast. I mean, I wish that I did have a crystal ball so I could get the real numbers for everybody, but this is just what we're
It's next to
thinking.
impossible, and I
right.
totally understand.
And I know this will change. It's probably, will change tomorrow.
Those two items are not included in this, the 1.6 million.
No, I don't see them.
And you concur with that? I mean, this is just from the departments, right?
No, and also
Digging
from
down to-
information that was reviewed by the finance department too. I can look further into that, but and I'll do some more research on that part.
Yeah, if you want,
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
in looking at the property taxes and the sales tax,
Mhm.
we had a tremendous increase in 21 in those two areas to the point of about $11.3 million. And now I see the overall fund going down because of all the considerations, not going up 11.3, but literally going down 7 million. And that's an $18 million swing, which is substantial. And I need to understand that.
Sure.
If you could possibly give me some more information down the road, not today.
Yeah, as we go forward, I'm sure that that'll present itself and I'll make sure that we touch base on that.
Sorry. Is it okay, Caius?
Caius.
So you're talking about the first two lines of the, I mean, you're talking about the sum total, but
three
first,
pages.
on
I'm talking
page
about
one, the
page-
first two items is property taxes,
Yeah.
forecasted revenue. So it's not included in
And then
that?
you keep going. it
No, no.
goes 4 pages long.
No,
But
it's
I
included.
understand it's
He's just, he's indicating that from based on what he's hearing, there's, he feels like there maybe should be, those should be increased further
So
than what
maybe
the
this
forecast
forecast
is.
is,
Yeah, you know, in 21, we actually had.
I understand what you're saying. I'm
11.3
just trying to figure out where it is on
And
this
I'm
because you're
just-
saying,
Well, and I don't see it either. I agree. But I guess my point is, I can't see property taxes going down and you haven't forecasted it. You said they're going to stay about the same.
Mhm.
And
Up
you showed the
400,
sales tax.
up 400,000 in the property from 22 to 23 in line one on page one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Would
mean,
that
those
be-
are minimal, but I understand the other revenue sources in areas they've gone down. But I don't see the projection of how our property taxes will, and sales tax, those two combined areas will drop 11.3 or say 11 million, just for easy numbers. And I guess that's where, you know, this is something you can't answer right now, Erica. I get it. But I'd like to get more information on that so we can understand that, because in speaking with Joe Onsick, probably 30 days ago, he said, you know, Bill, I don't think you can use 11.3 million going forward every year, probably more like 8 or 9 million. So if we're looking at 8 or 9 million plus, and then we show a negative of 7 million, that's a big swing, $15 million. And that would literally make our projections for the next couple of years look much better. So I don't know, you know.
Right. Well, if you look at the individual for those items at the top there, the property sales tax, I mean, they're going up. I mean, they're not going up by the numbers that you're indicating. So we'll look into that, but that doesn't make up all of, you know, the total there is the aggregate of everything.
And I get that.
Mhm.
Erica, I'm not questioning what you're doing. I appreciate all you put together here. I guess my only question is, when we did the 21 audit and we had 11.3 million of excess revenue,
Right.
where is that 11.3 for this year? Because I can't see it going down. Even if it
Right.
stays flat, we should still have it each. and
Well,
every year.
that 11.3 million, it went into the reserves. And that's
Well-
what's going into the reserves that we have to use going
But we did
forward.
that for the 21 year, we
Right.
took to pay back the
Correct.
reserves that we had taken to balance the
Right.
budget.
And the reason that we have reserves, we can't assume that we're going to have an excess revenue or expenditure every year. We've been lucky enough to have that. But all that really indicates is that there was some over budgeting. So, and a lot of it, I mean, if you look at it, there's vacancies carried forward. I mean, even now, looking at all the people who are trying to hire
I'm
staffing.
not talking about the expenses. I'm just talking about the revenues. And I agree with you. The expense amount was a little over 6 million lower than we anticipated.
Right.
I'm taking that out of the equation because the total between the revenue and the expenses was 17 million surplus.
Right.
So I took the expenses out, so that's an anomaly because of the pandemic and all these other things. And I understand everything else is going to go up. But I guess, you know, what we need to do is maybe dive a little deeper, if you don't mind. I would like to dive a little deeper into how we come up with these figures, because I just don't see revenues going down that much. I understand there are, 40 or 60, maybe 80 different categories. But in looking at them, I don't see any major decreases. I'm sure there are. But, you know, in the big ones where we get most of our revenue, the property tax, sales tax, income tax, local use tax, those are all pretty steady year in and year out.
Right. And I think if you look at we had to use some reserves to balance the budget even for 2022 and for 2021. And so that, I mean, the excess revenue, how that plays a part in that is that maybe it's less than we had to use in reserves as well.
You know, it's a good point, Erica. And, you know, I think what happened was in 21, when we projected the revenues for the year, they were under projected by 11.3 million. But the reality is we did get that 11.3 million in. Now we used it this year to pay back the reserves. And I think we gave some back to COVID. And I understand all that. But going forward, I guess we just need to, it's tough to discuss right now because it's so detailed, but maybe we could discuss it a little bit in the future because
Sure.
I think these numbers are very conservative and I like that. But I think they may be understated because that audit from 21, where we had an 11.3 million excess revenue coming in, isn't reflected in the 22 budget.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I agree with your particular numbers associated with this. So I think we ought to.
Well,
be-
I'm just
we
taking
need
what
to all
Joe
be in
Onset gave
agreement
us.
on this.
Mr. Sir just said it.
I remember when I was first sworn in and I was on the finance committee, Chairman Hoscheit made a statement and I said, John, I'm not understanding the sales tax portion of this. How are we making these wild assumptions? And John said, just trust me on this one, kid. Just stick around. Okay, here I am 4 years later. I still don't quite understand those revenues and where they come from.
Well, just stick around.
Yeah, just stick around, kid. So this might be the appropriate, but I gotta be honest, his projections were really spot on. I just don't understand the secret sauce in that field. So if I could ask for, slice of pizza and a diet soda and we'll get together and kind of say, okay, just help educate me as to what, because if we're going to be asking for, or suggesting we should have this amount of increase for that tax, I should at least fundamentally understand where the revenues from that originate, where they come from. And I'm acknowledging that weakness. I don't understand that specific field. So that's a reach out.
No problem. We'll
Okay.
provide more detail on that.
Thanks. And Jen,
Comes with a comment.
A lot of pizza.
that's a lot of pizza for that one. Yeah.
Comes.
Thumbs on mine.
Dump.
Hey, guys. I'm kind of learning as I go here, but common sense tells me that the sales, everything is costing more money. Everything, no matter where you look, you want a Diet Coke or a piece of pizza or, everything. So Mr. Leonard has used the word anomaly a couple times and I'm 100% in agreement with that. So with our projections, I'm hoping that the cost of goods and services and everything else doesn't stay where it's at because that's not good for anybody. But when we do those projections, are we taking that into account too, that things are kind of in a wonky world right now?
To the extent that we can do that, we can only really do the projections based on the information that we know. The answer to that is kind of yes and no.
Great answer.
Yes.
I'll stick around, kid. I'll stick around.
But seriously, if the conversation is that right now, because of inflation or post-pandemic and, whatever the case may be, everything is at a lift right now. If the reality is within the next 24 months, 36 months, those prices seem to settle down, then I would expect a drop in revenues based on the tax, based on the drop in prices. And I just want to make sure that the assumptions on that, like that's a one-to-one correlation and I'm not just missing it altogether.
I think that's fairly accurate, your assumption on that, but there's so many pieces that go into it. Like, in order to get the sales tax amounts, the revenues for the potential funding sources, we had to reach out to the Department of Revenue because certain items with sales tax, they don't even apply to us at all. And so we wouldn't know. So we can't look at the Department of Revenue's just numbers and decide on that. We had to have them do an analysis for us on that. And that's where we
Give us the
got those.
detail
Right,
that we need. The state doesn't give us that detail.
right. So,
I find that amazing. That's like way over my head, but yeah.
So the only way we're gonna get it is go to them and ask for it specifically.
that's right. And we did, and we got
Oh,
it.
That
so.
time.
Huh?
You don't have that much time.
But, I guess what it boils down to is the bottom line on page 5.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I think that's how we need to to direct our attention, I think if we're looking at the deficits for 2023, well, even for this year, for that matter. But the deficits for 23, 24, and 25.
Mr. Chair, Tepe here. Do you think we can get a consensus that we all agree that these are the numbers we need to target for?
And yes,
I mean, yeah, I'm good with it
Uh,
because what else are we gonna use?
You know, I would like a little more clarification before I would agree with these numbers, because I'm missing probably 4 or 5 different factors that I think we should take into consideration. I'm not saying that they're right or that these are the numbers, but I think if we take a look at the IMRF, it's going to be a 1-year deal where we're going to get about 1.8 million. We got another 300,000 in another area. Income sales tax should probably increase about 2 million by the projections we've had so far this year. And then next year, we also have investment income, which with interest rates going up, where we were getting 0.4 or 0.5%, if that doubles, we're going to increase our investment income by 1%. And with interest rates going up and talking to investment bankers, they said that we should hopefully next year easily be able to get somewhere between 1 and 2% on our money. So if we use $1 million there, and then the treasurer said, we're going to receive about another 1.4 million in property tax revenue. So, you know, you add those 4 things up, and what we've got is about 6 million there. And then I still don't see any reflection of the additional revenues that were recorded in the 21 audit, which are going to move forward. All I see is a reduction. So respectfully, I just don't understand every detail as well as I need to. And until I do, you know, I would vote against giving a consensus on this, but hey, it's the pleasure of the committee to give a consensus on whatever they want. You don't need a unanimous vote.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, you know, just brush off your particular points. But my point is that we really need to look at additional revenue sources, and that's the kind of thing that discussion we need to have. And whether it's 15 million that we're looking for or 21 million that we're looking for, we're still looking for a decent number.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Leonard.
Mr. Tepe, you know, I agree with you on that 100%. I guess what I'm saying is the amount of deficits that we're looking at because of other considerations that aren't in there yet, I think are much higher than they need to be. I'm not saying that, you know, down the road somewhere, we're not going to need additional revenues, sources of revenue. I'm just saying, I think right now, there are ways that we could possibly manage things, but until I get more definition on it, I can't agree to anything until I understand everything in detail. And unfortunately, at this point, as Erica will attest, it's a very complicated matter. And it's going to take me some time. I'm a little bit slower than the rest of you, but I
Well,
would stay against this.
maybe you feel you need more detail.
Mr. Chair, Sturgis, I echo everything here. I would not be in a position to give consensus on it. We just got it. I'm just, my brain is still trying to wrap its head around. I'm thinking we were meeting this morning for an hour to kind of say, let's lay the groundwork for where we think we are and where we're trending, and kind of begin to digest this a little bit and maybe begin some dialogue and conversations.
I think we all agree there's going to be a deficit. The amount
Yeah, I
of that
think, yeah.
deficit might be, you know, we all might
And I
have.
think that's the trend.
But there's definitely-
Mr. Leonard's points are so well taken. I didn't mean to, you know, discount those as well, but I was looking at the big picture there. We're in the hole.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Yes.
Not on your
Alan.
committee. Thank you. Not on your committee, just butting in. But the figure of adding 61 people just in the state's attorney's office over the next couple of years, there are things that we wish we could do, but that seems to me just a larger number of people than we, as state's attorney Mosser said, where in the world would we house them all? So I'm hoping that as these processes shake out, we'll also figure out just how many people we need, who does what. Some people may do 2 different things over the course of a week, and we just don't know because we don't have any experience yet. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Caius. So as far as, I don't know that I have the exact definition of what this ad hoc committee is. Or are we shooting for a target date eventually? Are we going to take a step forwards? What are our benchmarks along the way? And where will we be when do we need to be there? And what are our benchmarks along the way so we can, we don't get channeled off in somewhere?
I
And
think, we've talked about the dates that we have to adhere to if we're gonna ask for increase in sales tax and that type of thing. And that, obviously, that would be for
End of this month.
the next, the next opportunity for that. Those opportunities, there's always the year after that. So
What's
not,
what's that deadline? I'm sorry, did we
We
have?
have a 180-day notice that we have to give before we can put it on a referendum. So sometime in June,
June.
My
and
point,
we're in June.
and this is June. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at. Are we going to, how much are we going to discuss this before we get to that point that we're,
well, I think what everybody need here is Leonard says that he has some detail that he'd like to see. I think we need to spell out what that is so he can get that to have that information that he needs to make a decision. I think the big point is to get it in front of all of us,
right?
to understand that there is a problem here.
Sure.
There is a problem. Now, how deep is that problem? We have a different idea as to how deep it is, but we know there's a problem, there's a deficit. And so recognizing that, we have to come up with some decisions within that timeframe.
Sure.
But I just don't think that deficit is not going to go away. Maybe we only hire 40 attorneys rather than 60 or whatever it is, but I think there's a definite problem. And we're ignoring the fact that we've got a problem right now within the county is from the standpoint of being able to hire people, being able to pay them properly. So that's my feelings.
Mr. Berman, Surges?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Sanchez had his hand up.
Oh, Sanchez here. Are we certain on the date? 180 days before November, at least according to Google, before November 8th is May 12th. Have we completely missed the boat?
I thought it was 180 days. I thought that's what Madam Chair had said. And she had set a date in June, but I didn't know what that specific date was.
Yeah, I guess that makes all the difference in the world if we even still have
Yeah,
time.
we're kind of,
But then we have a short time to figure out to which percentage point do we want to go.
or if we want to
Or
go.
everyone.
If
This is for the sales tax.
If somebody could just email and say, here are the hard deadlines for each one of these.
Yeah,
Just
they
a
give us a
real-
benchmark so we know where
Right,
we're,
perfect.
because we could study this a long
Oh,
time
yes.
into next year's budget.
And Erica, if I can, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can ask one question. On the deficits that we're showing, if I had to compare the overall shortfall compared to the requested amount for the Safety Act, in my mind, I'm kind of making an assumption that the Safety Act is the root of most of this. And I don't want that, I would rather ask that question than have the wrong assumption.
Yeah, if you look at that last section, just the Safety Act section there, you can see that plays a very significant role in the amount of the deficit.
So of the 18 million shortfall in 2023, 13 of it.
No.
No.
5.3. It's the same.
Right, 5.3, and then in 2024, it's the 7,625,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. Not 13 of it.
But I thought I saw numbers on the Safety Act that the whole thing was like,
It's like
was it
6
21 million bucks divided? Is that where I'm at? That same
Those are
one.
the 3 years from the judicial part, Safety Act summary.
Got it. Okay. See, look at that. You didn't even have to buy
Mr.
it.
Chairman, should we set up another date
Absolutely.
and maybe give us a few days to digest everything, get our answers, and then have another meeting quickly? Once we know the dates too, that we have to make a decision. I mean, with respect to the Safety Act, we know we're going to have to spend additional monies, and from the deficits that were given to us, potential deficits for 23, about a third of that deficit is Safety Act money. So it's not the lion's share, but it's substantial.
Big part.
Requested another meeting of this.
I know she had, but we haven't published it, have we?
No, we have not yet.
No.
I just wanted.
I'm sorry, you requested a meeting.
We talked about another meeting Monday, but I think that's too soon.
I think it's too soon.
I think it's too soon. I know that Erica certainly, we've got to get Mr. Leonard's detail.
Yeah, what are you doing over the
Not gonna
weekend?
jump out.
I'm traveling over the weekend.
Good
honestly.
answer.
But I will reach out to the Joan.
Shame you
I'll
have
reach
to
out
change
to
your
Joe
schedule.
Onzig and let him know.
Be back to 7.
Yeah, we got
Well,
Also, I'm trying to find that deadline number and for some reason it's evading me.
I'll
Or
talk.
that
to Madam
deadline
Chair.
date.
Let's see if we can come up with a date.
And could you email all of us with the dates so we know that, and then we'll figure out our next meeting?
This was rather quick,
Yeah.
but I think
Our next step is we're reviewing the figures. We'll have more from Erica. When you'll share that with us, we Bill,
Sure,
or?
yeah.
So I think most important, your interpretation of it as well, because I appreciate somebody who can interpret. There's a lot of numbers there.
can we, you want to go on record as to what your requests are right now so that we all know what, and that we do have that then by the next period or what?
Yeah, and we really need this information given to the committee as a whole, 24 to 48 hours before the meeting so that we can review it.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Happy to hear you. Part of my suggestion was that we know, my point was, we know there's going to be a deficit. We don't know what that amount is going to be. And I thought it would be advisable for us to have a discussion about what our alternatives would be. What are our choices for handling those deficits? And I think we can do both at the same time, regardless of the amount that we're working on.
Agree.
That's why I wanted to have that discussion today so that we can work on that too.
Well, you're just saying you'd like to discuss more detail? today?
No, I just like to discuss what are our alternatives,
Oh, the
our options
Yeah.
associated with funding a shortfall. Let's just to get ahead of the, just to get ahead of the curve.
Well, on our last page, it says our potential funding sources. I think that the only thing in addition to that would be to cut expenses. And I think that, that is a tremendous challenge, especially when we're talking about multi-million dollars. Fine. There's probably something out there can be cut, but not $12 million, not $18 million.
I understand, again, Tepe here, but, we're saying one is for us to, as a board, to enact the CPI, which they're estimating to be about $2.5 million for 2023 revenue, if we did that.
Mhm.
But we had multiple presentations on what to do in a sales tax increase. So if we're going to go forward with a sales tax referendum, if that would be, our recommendation, I think we should also recommend what that amount should be and what those funds should be to cover. And I think it would also be appropriate for our subgroup to make some recommendations associated with the ARPA funds, whether we feel that should be in there or not. So those are some of the crazy discussions I think we should
All right.
have.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree with Mr. Tepe. I think, although this is not a preferable option, we do have a little bit of a fail-safe or fallback with the ARPA funds that we could use to balance the budget, assuming that these projections are correct. If they're not correct and the deficits are less than what we're looking at right now, then obviously we could take the additional monies that come in next year, just as I think this year in 22, we're going to have a surplus. Maybe I'm all wet on that, but I think right now our fallback is property tax increase, sales tax increase, or use of ARPA funds. And those are really the three options.
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
So what always concerns me is when we're talking about the ARPA funds, and what I'm worried about is sustainability. So we all know that this is statutorily what we have to do. We all know we're in a hole. And going forward, I mean, we're not going a little bit forward, we're going a long way in the future. So as much as I would like to say, yes, let's use the ARPA funds to fix this issue, we have a bigger picture in front of us. So to me, sustainability in our revenue sources is essential in these conversations. So I'm trying to understand that a little bit better. Maybe I'm just not getting it, but that's my thought on it. So.
Okay. My feelings are that, we talk about sales tax increase. There's no guarantee that we're going to get that. That's strictly based on referendum. The only thing that we have under our control is a property tax increase to take advantage of the CPI. That's really the only thing we have under our control. The other is based on referendum and what people want.
And excuse me, Caius, and the CPI is not gonna, you said 2.6 million or something with the full increase in
That
the.
was this year or for
Yeah,
next year, because
next
it
year
wouldn't
could
come
be-
in. until-
It's 5% the maximum we can.
Small
increase
part
it.
of the 12 million we have to, not that
So,
we didn't use it.
anything else?
Well, there's the other effect where if we don't get this, we're going to have one hell of an austerity program and start to limit what's happening here.
Sanchez here. That is the one thing that I haven't really heard in this conversation yet that I know people from the outside will be thinking about is what about budget cuts? There's a stereotype that government and officials like to just, raise the taxes and spend more money without making any cuts. And I've been here long enough to know most of our departments are pretty well lean. Some maybe even down to the bone. So I do see that we're looking at adding to some departments, but overall, we should at least have that as a part of our conversation of where can we make cuts? Are there any places we can make cuts, and will they be enough to suffice even some of this shortfall? I feel like I already know the answer, but I think it's important for the public dialogue to see that we're at least making the effort and looking and showing them, yeah, we can make cuts here, or we have nowhere to make cuts.
Yeah, that was one of the requests that we had earlier this year, is to a forecast by department as to what they could reduce their expenditures. I don't know if we never follow up on that, I guess.
I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe there's still several studies in the works right now, but scope creep is a really tricky thing. And every time we try and focus on one specific area, it gets out of hand to the point where the study becomes almost unaffordable to begin to look at. Yet on the other hand, where we're going here, in my opinion, is we really, as stewards of our constituents, it's up to us to educate them and say, here are the lists of services that are provided by the county, and here's the money coming in. Which services would you be willing to do away with, or would you be willing to pay more? And I don't think it gets any more complicated than that for me. There's certain things that were mandated by the state to do, and everything else becomes a question. And not quite, I don't want to overcomplicate that, but just saying, this is my budget and I need 15% more. Well, I might look at your budget and say, I'm questioning what your charter was and what you're supposed to be doing, and how much has your particular department taken on over the past 30 years that is not within what we were supposed to be doing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Surges on their comments. And I think because of the Safety Act, we're looking at about 101 employees, additional employees that they are requesting through the Safety Act. So with respect to an attrition program or any type of cutback in payroll, I think that's going to be next to impossible because we do have to add people in these mandated areas of the Safety Act.
It will not be a net zero.
Right.
I mean, it will not be a net zero for sure.
That's
No doubt about it. But I do feel that there might be the ability, I've looked over the Safety Act pretty closely and the requests from the departments. And I think my hope is, well, really it's twofold. Number one, that we don't have to add 101 people, maybe we can add 75. And if we do that, that would reduce that Safety Act cost by about 25%. Can we do that? I don't know, but I do know that the judicial partners told me they're going to have a heck of a time hiring all those people.
Oh, certainly.
So are they going to be able to do it? I don't know, but those are questions, I guess, not for this committee, but just concerns.
Bill, we're struggling to hire somebody in human services.
Yeah.
And we have interviewed and we're the department that's supposed to hire all the people. We're struggling. So,
And maintenance and health.
yeah, exactly.
And
I mean, this is not an easy market yet.
It's
it's an elephant in the room.
Did we say we're meeting on Monday or we're pushing this?
No,
off
we're not
a
going to
week?
meet Monday. I'll
Okay.
talk to Madam Chair and we'll see, but it would be later in the week.
Give us maybe, 2-day notice.
Yeah.
And then if we could get some information, I'm going to speak with Erica maybe on Monday, if that's okay, if you're going to be gone.
I'll be out of town, so if we could speak right after the meeting about what you're looking for, I will.
Okay, sure. Be
see
happy
what
to.
we can do.
Well, the other one, we all understand. I guess what we really need is to get this word out to everybody, Everybody gets on the same page as far as seeing what the problem is and the solutions that are before us. And of course, that's the most difficult thing, I guess, educating everyone.
So are you saying we want to get this out to the rest of the board?
Well, not only the board, but the public.
Yeah, the public needs to know what we got in front of us.
The public needs to know, because I think that, every day you talk to your constituents, you're talking to friends and neighbors and I tell you, like you, Sturgis, after that meeting I was overwhelmed with what was presented.
I hung up the phone and called Ms. Mosser and said, can I just have a half an hour of your time, please? My head is spinning. And she was kind enough to say, please come on by and walk through it. And we really had great conversation, as did I with Chief Judge and Sheriff Hain and and I've not met the public defender lady ever once, but I mean, holy tamale, this one's a big one on top of what we already have coming. This is time for pause, time for
something. And, maybe this is from our.
Yeah, you had this on top of the abuse and neglect increase that we had the past 2 years. I mean, it's just phenomenal in the court system. And
I agree.
We're gonna maybe come up with a budget, but that isn't gonna solve where these people are gonna sit.
You don't understand. It's just 61 people. They need a facility. I mean, you're just talking, you want to micro into each one of these cells. They don't have room for 61 people.
That's what I said, just where they're gonna sit.
20 people. But that's another discussion.
I know.
Well, yeah, I was speaking with somebody about it, and they said, well, how about the old,
Sam's Club?
where our morgue was or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The yellow building on there?
Fabian?
Yeah.
Or
How about that? I said, well,
the old coroner's office?
Coroner's office, yeah.
I think that was relegated to storage of
I think that's what I said.
non-people,
But somebody brought that up.
non-living
I agree with that.
entities. We can discuss that with our
Somebody
interim
brought that up
director,
as
but
future space for people.
I think on a
Maybe
safety.
backside storage.
We could put a
After we
second
close
level
backside.
in this room.
Mezzanine.
Motion to adjourn?
That's good.
Seconded by Leonard.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We're out of here.
But
It was good.
I think this is a
that,
very productive meeting.